Hi everybody. It is a beautiful Tuesday morning in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope you're all doing great. Oh, I just lied to you. It's not morning. Missed it by 5 minutes. Liar by 5 minutes. Shout out to Regular Decision for the music. Played us in with. I'm going to keep playing that because I'm really into that mix. I hope everybody's been checking out the State of Sound series we've been doing here on Twitch. I've made these my studying and coding music lately. Just really nice little variety of 20-30 minute mixes. How's everybody doing today? You stressed out? Exams coming up? Looking at summer jobs? I've been interacting with lots of you through consultations, research consultations. It seems like lots of cool work is happening between projects and the work you're doing for all your exams and papers and everything. Man, I am just in awe of state students. So today, like the title says, we're going to learn a little bit about Ink.JS. How many of y'all have ever heard of Zork? Zork. Let's do a little Zork talk. So Zork is like one of the first widely known video games. It is thought of as like a Sentinel text-based adventure. When you see games where you have to type your little responses, what is your character going to do, and you need to get them essentially exactly right in order for the command to work. That's people are usually referencing Zork when they talk about that. Let's get that State of Sound mix going again. Can I get it? Yeah. So Zork was made by a team at MIT in 1979-ish. Let's see, there's probably some cool Zork fan art. Yeah, you can see people pretty much invent in their own mind what they think this world looks like. And Zork is super correlated to like early Zelda games. The idea of like the top-down adventure really like spawns from a lot of theater of the mind text-based games that were earlier. Yeah, video games built with hypertext. Yeah, here's what Zork would look like. So it would tell you where you're at, how many moves you have as like your budget of moves left, and do things like you're essentially giving commands for what your character is going to do. and they interact with the world that you can't really see. There's no, it's not a video game. There's no video, but it's definitely an electronic game. So I've been really into thinking about Zork and like an intro to game development through text games, which I don't think is the approach a lot of people are introduced to these things through at this point in time. Probably noodle around in 3D or 2D art and interaction, then you make your way towards games now. But I have a big gap in my own experience around text-based games. So let's move our desktop audio down just a little. Cool. So I've been reading about Ink. Ink is a JavaScript library. Essentially to build these kinds of interactions in the browser. So rather than me talking, let's watch a video together. We're gonna like noodle around for 2 hours, hopefully make a little interactable thing, but let's not stress out too much about it. Damn, that set's awesome. Okay. I got this little video going. Let's watch it.
Welcome to a tutorial video on JavaScript and Ink. In this video, I'm going to talk about Ink for Web.
Also drinking my cup of Joe here.
When you're using the Inky editor, there is an option within the File menu to publish for Ink for Web. This produces a JavaScript and HTML collection that runs your Ink story in a web browser. What it produces, though, is an HTML file and 3 JavaScript files, along with a singular CSS file. I've loaded all that in a repo here so we can talk through what it does and start to think through ways of using JavaScript with Ink. I want to start, though, with the Ink story I've written. It's not terribly exciting. It literally says right here, this is an example story. And you see that right over here, example story.ink. This is an Ink story produced from this text. Now I run it through the Inky editor and produce the Ink for Web version. I've taken those files and put them in this so we can look at them all together. The first of which is the index.html file. As you notice, it's fairly straightforward. It has the exact same title, it includes a style sheet, and includes some of the information we see over here on the right hand side. Written for Ink is this link right here. You see a container.
This is essentially just HTML syntax so far, right? Kind of hijacking some of our HTML and syntax for these little interaction systems.
A header 1, example story right here. We see on line 20. Byline, I didn't include that information, as well as 3 JavaScript files down here at the bottom. The first of which is Ink.JS. We can jump over to that.
This is the actual library loading in through this JavaScript file. Probably we remember this from when we worked with A-Frame in an earlier one of these videos. Yeah, so this isn't meant to be human readable, probably.
But right now, it's not worth looking at. But it is, though, the Ink runtime for an Ink file that has been compiled using the Ink engine. What this basically means is we can use Ink in a JavaScript by using this runtime and including it along with different functions we can call. So coming back over the HTML file, we see we have that runtime. It's the very first thing included. The next thing included is the example story.js. What this is, even though it looks a little bit weird here, is a variable story content and then JSON content around that, set to the content of that variable. When you're using this, making a story.js file from that same file menu within Inky, you are creating this file. It's basically taking the JSON content that would have been the compiled content of an Ink story and setting it to the value of a variable. This allows us to more easily use it within a JavaScript environment. So, coming back to HTML.
If any of that didn't make sense, I think it essentially can translate to we're setting the rules for the interactions and the choices. JSON is like semi-human readable, but it's a great way of encapsulating a lot of parameters in a single file that remains like human editable.
Now we have our HTML file, we have our runtime, we have our story, Then we have an extra file here, main.js. This is this last file here included on line 28. This is actually a collection of commands that uses the JavaScript API for Ink to do different things. And I'm going to talk through bits of it, and then later within this expanded series, we'll see examples of how to use that API for your own purposes. But for now, let's just glance at it, and then I'll talk through a couple of things. So we'll see the very first thing it does is include that story content pulled from example story into an Ink.JS.story object. So it's creating a new object based on that content of that variable, that JSON, and making a new story object out of that. From there, it's doing some things with global tags. I'm going to skip through. There are no tags as part of this story. And scroll.
I'm starting to now want a like demo project in front of us. So let's pause that video quick. In case you haven't already noticed, I've never worked with Ink before. This is my first time ever seeing it. So you're learning with me, and I'm not quite sure what we're going to need as time goes on. What we can do is we can look to see if people have worked with Ink.js in Glitch before, because there might be like a demo project that people use. It doesn't look like it. Including the .js might have hurt us there. No, okay. Do they have... Oh, cool. There's a little example. Shout out to Dan Cox. That's whose video we're watching here. Okay, so they got a little repo here. Okay. I mean, why not? Let's just, if we're going to be watching this tutorial series, let's just kind of use this repo. I don't want to do it on Replit here. Let's credit this guy. There you go. Throw Dan Cox a YouTube subscription. It's free. Did you know it's free? It's free to subscribe to people on YouTube. Incredible. Okay, so we got what, like 6 files in here. I'm just gonna set up a... We remember Glitch, right? We were using Glitch last time. Oh, I'm gonna start playing that regular decision set again. Just wait. Let's do new project. I don't know, what do we think? This is like just a web app, right? So let's just do a website. What's going to be in there? We're going to have HTML. We're going to have JavaScript. We're going to have an assets folder. We're going to have probably like a README markdown file. I forget what else we said. We'll probably have a style sheet. Okay, let's look. Yeah, oh man. Websites. The beautiful interoperable web. So let's just replace some of these with what we need. Boy, I keep clicking over that. Okay, get this Zork out of my face. One of my favorite axes to grind in game world is the game genres aren't dictated by, like often, aren't really dictated by the types of interaction the user's having. They're like dictated by games that it reminds people of. And I often think about how, by that rule, all text-based games are Zork-likes. I think if anyone's familiar with the 90s game Rogue. Rogue was like a dungeon crawler game where you had, what is it, procedural enemies, random level generation, a loss condition that you can't restart from, single life. I might be missing some roguelike rules there. We just call any game that has those conditions roguelikes. But I've often thought about how Zork is a roguelike that predates Rogue. Zork-like. We're making a Zork-like, everybody. Okay. I just stole this HTML file. Let's If you're following along and want this repo, a little demo repo for you there, and I'm about to have one in glitch that we can all edit together. Okay, I got our HTML example story.inc. That's pretty useful. So let's make a file called, oh man, I already forgot. Was it called example story.inc? Ooh, those capitals will get us. I think case sensitivity might be a thing in this context. I know it is. Example story.js. We'll change this script.js to, I think the cases were also here. Example story.js, and grab that JavaScript. Don't worry about it too much. This is just, we're ripping open the seasoning packet to make tacos. We don't necessarily need to know how they make the cumin. Now, if I was selling tacos professionally, I would probably want to know what's in that spice packet. We're just messing around. We're making hobby tacos. Ink.JS is this other script. Got a main.js. How's my mod doing today? You chilling? Having a good day? This style sheet is like stuff we can mess with, but it at least tells us the rules for styling. Getting into style sheets, everybody. Just chilling. That's cool. Okay. This git ignore is for version control stuff. Example story.inc, example story.js. They both have their capitalization right. I have lost so much time to capitalization of file names in web dev. Sweet little license here. I don't think we need this readme. That's just going to confuse me. I don't really use these. Cool. Then what? There's like, they changed like the renaming system where like you can't do, I guess you can. Okay, here we go. Ink.JS experiment. Just writing this note to Colin from a year ago, who has the same idea to make this thing again and can't remember if I'll search Ink.JS and glitch again and not find my own project. So, I'm gonna change that just because some of the let's call this let's call it that just to keep it from if you know, you know. Okay. I think we're ready to get back in our video. Except now we have like stuff to reference it against.
Down into the continue story function. In fact, I'm going to scroll down to about line 46. That's the start of how it's using the API. Now, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the API in this video, but I want people to be aware in watching this that if you use the Ink for Web option, you're using the JavaScript API. And you can write your own version of working with this using the same API functionality. Being aware that this is actually a really great example of how to use it to create something similar for your own projects. So again, I'll talk through a little bit of this and then we'll wrap up this video, and in the expanded series of this, an expanded video series, we'll see more examples of using this API. So the first of which is can continue. This checks to see if there's more text. Has the story ended yet or not? Then right here on line 49 is story.continue. This is the main thing we're going to be talking a lot about in this video series. This grabs the next section of the story. It grabs the next text, loads the next options, but if you can continue, you call continue. So if there's remaining part of the story, it calls continue and it gets the next text, loads the next option, and does everything else. Think of it as sort of the next tick in the story or the next thing to do. We're going to be checking, can we continue? Then we'll be calling continue. And in this example, it does a whole lot of other things where it's treating tags in different ways and doing everything else. But we're going to scroll down a bit because we don't care a whole lot about tags at this moment. Scroll down some more. And we'll look a little bit right here.
This is super cool how this is organized. It's like all these commands are like as if it's commanding like a ticker tape to like keep feeding me more like responses in response to my response, or like end communication kind of stuff. It's like with like a little bit more nuance to it. It's pretty neat.
Here. This is the other thing I wanted to touch on. So I mentioned continue loads the next chunk of the story, the next text, the next choices. If there are choices, they will be within current choices. Notice right here it's using a for each within JavaScript and calling a function on top of that to, for each choice, create links, which we would see over here if there were any choices in this. There aren't. There's just this simple text. But within each of this, it's creating a paragraph, it's doing some other things, it's doing a show delay.
Paragraph.
That's the basic idea here
interesting piece
is that if there would be choices, they would be in story.current choices. If there's any more text, it will be loaded within continue. We check to see if we continue. Down here.
That current nomenclature is interesting. That's going to confuse me later. Current. So it like is really keeping track of what like point in the decision tree it's at and like relabeling it as current. It's cool.
At the bottom of this, we check story.current choices, do something with those choices. In this case, add them to the HTML and then move on. So we see here it's got the slow delay, scroll down. There's a lot of extra stuff in this. Remove all, set visible, split property tag. So within this main.js file, it's doing a whole lot of extra stuff we don't necessarily need. But the three parts of that API we're going to return to in later videos. Can continue. We need to know if we can.
By the way, if you're ever recording video instruction of your screen share, be like Dan Cox. Don't re-record because you tripped over like 2 words. I have wasted so much time in my life re-recording because I've stumbled over my words for 5 seconds in a like 15-minute video. So much respect for just like keeping going. Nobody cares.
Continue through the story. The continue function, load the next part of it, whatever the next text is, whatever the next choices are, and story.current choices contain the current choices for that story. So as a review, when we use the Inky editor and we choose within the file menu Ink for Web, we're creating an HTML file, 3 JavaScript files, and a CSS file. We didn't look at the CSS file, but those contain extra rules about how to change the visual layout of things. And we can, of course, tweak those options.
Okay, so there's an Inky editor that creates some of this stuff. This is what you learn when you start into a topic. So I guess you use this editor to make like the framework we just used. Wow, this is so cool. Wow, there is so much to this. So Ink and Inky are MIT licensed. That's pretty sweet. So you can use like the source code for either Ink, the framework, or the Inky editor also has that all public. I love open source. Okay, so we might get like 2 more videos into this and realize we really should be using the editor, but I don't know. It's not that. Markup, not programming. That's cool. That's like a really good priority to have for this. So I wonder, I guess you can use the Ink like platform or language. Some people would bristle at that use of language, but you can use the markup in place of editor function. And then it exports to JSON. Ah, okay, sorry, jumping out.
For our own stories. But at least for this series, we want to start to think about ways we can work with JavaScript, knowing from this example that the JavaScript API is out there and we can load the runtime Ink.JS, and in the main.js file, we started to see some of the functions we can work with to build our own Ink projects that use JavaScript in new and interesting ways. Thanks for watching.
Give that a thumbs up.
Editor X presents 5 steps to win over.
Oh, I'm getting advertised too, and so are you. Let's watch a minute of music instead. Drop your favorite North Carolina bands in the comments. Trying to turn the Bandcamp app into my day-to-day music player. It's my big thing I'm trying to do right now, so that I listen to more local music. It's going okay. Okay, the advertising's probably done. That's what we're gonna do. Just whenever YouTube tries to serve us an ad, we're gonna go watch that.
Welcome to a tutorial video on JavaScript and Ink. In this video, I'm going
to
talk about the Story API.
Let's go.
Now, in the previous video, I talked about
I
the
have.
Ink for Web option. When we're using the Inky editor,
I'll grab it at the next commercial break. I'll let you know.
Ink for Web. I create an HTML file, 3 JavaScript files, and a CSS file. Now, if we're not as interested in working directly in the web, we can also use JavaScript from the command line. We can do that through using the Node package Ink.JS.
I don't want to use Node. I don't want to use Node. I can. I don't.
Notice right here, I
just don't want to stream
that package.json.
I'd rather just edit right in Glitch.
The dependency of this project is Ink.JS. So we can load that through using the command line, npm install Ink.JS, or in this case, since I'm using the online repo service, I've just included that as an extra package. So we can use Ink.JS to still write JavaScript, to work with JavaScript and Ink. But in this case, we can sort of abstract it out, work with just JavaScript to talk through the API, and then in later videos come back to HTML and talk about designing interfaces in that area. So in this video, as I mentioned, I wanted to talk about a little bit more about the Story API. I introduced bits in the previous video. We talked about can continue. There's a true or false to see if the story is ended or not. We talked a little bit about the continue function. We check can continue. If we can continue, we call the continue function. And that gives us, loads the next bit of the story, gives us the next text, loads the next choices. And I talked a little bit about the current choices collection that's part of the story object that sort of gives us the current choices. Let's back up a second, and I'm going to look at the actual Ink programming for this. So we see we have a very standard beginning sentence. We have our first divert that goes to this knot right here. This knot has 4 choices that go to other knots: pizza, sushi, salad, and nothing. If we choose sushi, it ends. Everything else points.
I need to back up. About like 60 seconds, probably. I'm going to give music recommendations first, though. Probably from like least followed to most followed. This is a Raleigh electronic DJ that I'm really into. like plays kind of hard breaks. That might not be the right genre name, but called Echo Brown. Just got their new LP called Midnight Static. Pretty into it. I feel like this is a band that's going to be as big as they want to be, from Durham, called The Muslims. They're a punk band, not really my usual scene, but just really, really into them. I really like their sound. I think probably most people from Raleigh know Boulevards, but he's awesome. I think he just ran Boston. I think he ran the Boston Marathon yesterday. Like, that's awesome. I can't imagine being that good at two different things, but yeah, but his new EP is just killer. And then, I don't know, this is the band I just cannot stop listening to their, they did their most recent album is like a covers album, but I really like that. I really like their original composition album they just did. They're from Asheville. Yeah, check out local music. Drake doesn't need your listens. It'll be okay. Okay, let's go back. So I was getting worried in like the first minute of this video. I was getting a little worried. We need Inky. I'm thinking we can just do it native right in JavaScript.
And then
I think that's what the whole video series is about.
HTML and talk about designing interfaces in that area. So in this video, as I mentioned, I wanted to talk about a little bit more about the story API. I introduced bits in the previous video. We talked about can continue. There's a true or false to see if the story is ended or not. We talked a little bit about the continue function. We check can continue. If we can continue, we call the continue function.
Wait.
Loads the next bit of the story, gives us the next text.
Where did these JSON files come from, though? Like, we don't have JSON files. This might be what Inky makes. Okay. I'm going to be true to what I would do in a regular situation here. I'm going to download Inky. Uh, 64. Let's just take a look. We don't have to use it, but sure can use it. Oh, let's get that off the stream. Installing Inky. Okay. Here we go. So here's what Inky looks like. I mean, I don't know how to use this, so I guess like you could. Okay. So this is like the little bit of syntax he's talking about like end. I don't know. We've got it. We can use it if we need to use it. I guess like story export to JSON. Just throw it, I don't know. Story test. And then like so like index.json, package.json. That's weird. I don't know. Let's keep watching the video. We got the tools, but I'm just gonna start this over.
Tutorial video on JavaScript and Ink. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Story API. Now, in the previous video, I talked a little bit about the Ink for Web option. When we're using the Inky editor, we can choose from the file menu Ink for Web. It created an HTML file, 3 JavaScript files, and a CSS file.
Y'all know about Alt Escape? Just learned about that the other day. Okay, so from file, export for web. Did that throw that in? Ah, yeah, look at that. Okay, we can call this story test web or something. I bet it's going to make a zip. It's going to contain HTML, JavaScript, multiple JavaScript from what we saw earlier, JSON. It's extremely high quality hat. It's getting in my eyes. Story test web. How do you want to be opened? So the story test web is a unnamed file type. Weird, weird, weird. Okay. Finding utility in the video. Here we go.
Now, if we're not as interested in working directly in the web, we can also use
we're working
JavaScript
directly
from
in
the
the
command line. We can do that through using the node package Ink.JS. Notice right here, I've loaded that in my package.json file. I've set a dependency of this project is Ink.JS. So we can load that through using the command line, npm install Ink.JS, or in this case, since I'm using the online repo service, I've just included that as an extra package. So we can use Ink.JS to still write JavaScript, to work with JavaScript and Ink, but in this case, we can sort of abstract it out, work with just JavaScript to talk through the API, and then in later videos come back to HTML and talk about designing interfaces in that area. So in this video, as I mentioned, I want to talk about a little bit more about the Story API.
The utility of all of this is you could theoretically make Ink work with other web frameworks, right? Like, Inkly, I don't know anything about it, but I can't imagine it has like the ability to just like freeform start, like associating with other APIs and utilizing calls from other libraries and stuff like that. Just, I don't know, it's not a functionality you would ever build. But by making it web native, you like, I don't know, you can integrate it with Tone.js and have sounds built directly into the story. You could integrate it with these like, I think a lot about like these text to image like AIs, like GPT-3 and DALL-E is everywhere right now. It's about to release. And could you know, describe a portrait on the wall in the story that you're playing and see the image? I think that's the reason that you'd want to be kind of really truly web native here. But
yeah, I introduced bits in the previous video. We talked about can continue. There's a true or false to see if the story is ended or not. We talked a little bit about the continue function. We check can continue. If we can continue, we call the continue function, and that gives us, loads the next bit of the story, gives us the next text, loads the next choices, and I talked a little bit about the current choices collection that's part of the story object that sort of gives us the current choices. Let's back up a second, and I'm going to look at the actual Ink programming for this. So we see we have a very standard beginning sentence. We have our first divert that goes to this knot right here. This knot has 4 choices that go to other knots: pizza, sushi, salad, and nothing. If we choose sushi, it ends. Everything else points us back to that knot. So we sort of have a repeating structure here unless we choose the right response.
He's saying not as in K-N-O-T, which they use as like an internal like phrase for these nexus points, these decision points, it looks like.
Response. So I'm going to come over here to my index.js file, and we're going to talk about using the Ink.JS module in Node. Same JavaScript API, but a slightly different context. And another way we can work with the JavaScript and Ink interfaces together. So the very first thing I'm doing is loading the story object. We're going to need that to create a new story. I'm also using the FS or file system module. There are 2 different ways to load a Ink story within sort of this Node interface. The first of which is the way I'm doing right here. You do a read file sync on a file, and then you read.
Let's touch our version of it here. I just need to press escape. Okay, I don't think we need his part 1 up anymore. Let's see, this part 2. So index.js, is that still the same? So like line 20. No, it's actually pretty different. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, like, this doesn't look like JavaScript. I was looking at an HTML file. Index.js. So, yeah, I guess I just... So, like, oh, I think his index.js here is equivalent to our example story.js, maybe? Let's play around with it a little bit. Let's see if what he's saying about this where's my video at? This index.js. No, he was working within that Ink file just a moment ago. Yeah, okay, let's back up to what he's saying there about that Ink file. I'm going to get myself a little bit out of your way. Okay, let's so if we take that Ink file, part2.ink first, example story.ink. If you're watching this on a day that's not April 19th, 2022, this link probably won't work. But if you're here with us live, that's the page I'm looking at right now that we're editing. Let's grab... So we're going to grab that part2.ink. And then throw it in this file. This is an example file. That's all I can get to render out there. Example story, rather. Oh, so in example story.js. So this index.js is standing in for example story.js. Let's get crazy. We're not calling it part2.json though. Part2.json, this has to be called. I don't know.
Flex up, catch out, big bands, bow up. 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 60, Bentley, AP, that shit like 2P, right there. So we sort of have a repeating structure here unless we choose the right response. So I'm going to come over here to my index.js file, and we're going to talk about using the Ink.JS module in Node. Same JavaScript API, but a slightly different context. And another way we can work with the JavaScript and Ink interfaces together. So the very first thing I'm doing is loading the story object. We're going to need that to create a new story. I'm also using the FS or file system module. It's on file that I produced with the Inky editor. So I took this code, I put it into the Inky editor, I went file, produced a JSON file, which is what this is right here. This is a JSON file with everything together. And I'm now...
Do I have like a... Let's look at that file we printed out earlier. Oh, here's that thing we made earlier. Let's one of these is a all right. Let's open with that's fine. Okay, here's what printed out earlier. This is a JavaScript file. Yeah, we need to use the Inky editor. We're basically trying to write something that there's a machine to write. Thank you for teaching us that, Dan. Okay, let's put these videos on pause. Let's Inky web. Teach me how to ink. 15 minutes? Man, I have 15 minutes. Is this the video we just watched?
I think we...
So, we had this. Just Just messing around. Just having fun. Okay.
Welcome to a tutorial video on Ink for the web. In this video, I'm going to review how exporting for the web works, what files and
This is where we should have
started.
started.
To start here, I have code within the Inky editor. I've used a previous example of my Learning Ink tutorial videos.
Oh.
And I have the last video here on lists.
No, Dan. You're still ahead of us.
Hey everyone, my name's Trevor, and this is a fast-paced tutorial for writing video game dialogue using the open-source scripting language called Ink. The best way to create dialogue with Ink is going to be by using Inkle's custom editor called Inky. You can download Inky from Inkle Studio's website, which I'll put in the description of this video.
I'm getting rid of these closed
Once downloaded, you can
captions.
launch
They're
the
like
program,
automatic.
and you should see some sample dialogue. You can use the shortcuts Control+ to make the text a bit bigger, and likewise
Works in your
Control-
web
to make it a bit
browser
smaller.
too.
The dialogue in an Ink file is referred to as a story. The left-hand side is the editor, which we can use
This is
to
so much
create the
more
story.
our speed.
And on the right-hand side, we can interact with the story that we're creating. We can then use the top arrows to go back by one step in our story, or go all the way back to the beginning of the story. As you can see, if we type some plain text, it'll show up as part of our story. Hitting enter will go to a new line, which also corresponds to a new line of our dialogue, as can be seen on the right. We can create what's called a comment by doing 2 forward slashes followed by some text. Comments won't show up as lines of dialogue, and they can be used to better document what you're doing or even temporarily disable parts of your story. As a shortcut, you can hold Control and press the / key while on a line to comment or uncomment that line. If you want to comment out more than one line at once, you can use this syntax to create a block comment, where everything between these two markers won't show up as part of the story. If you go to the Ink dropdown in the top left, you can actually view sample syntax for some of the most fundamental things you can do with Ink. We'll start with what's called a knot. A knot represents a section of the story. It's declared by using these 3 equal signs on both sides of the knot's name.
Wasting an hour on something that's actually not the correct approach. Par for the course. It's just gonna happen when you're making stuff.
We'll call this knot main.
This is so much more
As we can see
intuitive.
on the right, it doesn't actually show up in the story yet. That's because we need to trigger it using something called a divert. We can go to Ink, Basic Structure, and Divert. We can see that a divert is declared by an arrow followed by the knot name that we want to go to. I'll change this to main, and now we can see the dialogue in our knot displayed on the right. As you might have guessed, you can think of end as a divert that's built into Ink that will end the story once used. You could also use the keyword done. While end ends the story in its entirety, done is meant to bring an end to a flow in your dialogue and doesn't necessarily have to bring an end to the entire story. We'll see a bit more on this later. Next, let's create a dialogue with a couple of choices. I'll start with some plain text, and then I'll go to Ink, Choices, Basic Choice, and then you can see that a basic choice is declared with this star.
Hi, Inky. Here we go. I think the reason he was doing better than us is because of that music in the background. Do, 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 do. Whenever a tech company has that music playing in the background, suddenly they can teach you how to do stuff. Okay. Let's, these are like choices, I think. Okay, so let's just start. So that choices button, it just inserts an asterisk. It does like enter asterisk space, I think. Like we can totally just do it ourselves. Oh, I'm dumb. He's about to tell me, I think, what I just
In front
discovered.
of the choice text. We'll make this choice be yes and add another choice to say no. Then we can add some text below each choice for the responses. Just to note, the indentation I'm doing here isn't at all required. But it just makes things a bit more readable. Now we can click through and see our choices play out. You'll notice that we see the text of the choice print out as well. If we don't want to print out the choice after we choose it, we can simply wrap it in brackets. As you can see, the choice no longer prints out after it's been chosen. You can also print out a variation of the choice. To do so, you wrap only part of the choice in brackets. The choice that's displayed will be everything up through the brackets, and the dialog that's displayed after will be everything except for what's in the brackets. Now let's do something a bit more interesting.
Why is only one of our choices showing? Let's try that again. Let's try going from scratch here. So, welcome to the libraries. How can I help you? So it's like the starting dialogue, right? And then ink, choices, basic choice. Let's just, in case, I think there's a chance I broke something here by having like exported once or something. So let's do I think we broke something earlier, like in my first experiment with that there. Can I add a third choice? Okay. Then what, like? So now if I click, I'm looking for a book, it should say, I can help with that. They lived happily ever after. That's it. Building out functionality. There was a little trick he had to not show
choices play out. You'll notice that we see the text of the choice print out as well. If we don't want to print out the choice after we choose it, we can simply wrap it in brackets. As you can see, the choice no longer prints out after it's been chosen. You can also print out a variation of the choice. To do so, you wrap only part of the choice in brackets. The choice that's displayed will be everything up through the brackets, and the dialog that's displayed after will be everything except for what's in the brackets. Now let's do something a bit more interesting. I'm going to create a knot called main with a question and 3 choices. Each choice is going to print out some text and then have a divert, which directs the story back to the main knot. By diverting back to the main knot, it'll send the dialogue back to the original question we posed, thus creating a loop for our dialogue. You'll notice that if we go through all of our choices, we get an error. This is because by default, these choices disappear after they've been chosen once, and after we've chosen them all, there's nothing else to show. One way to resolve this is by using a fallback choice.
Okay. Let's take a look at what exactly he has there. So I don't know how he made that main.
I'm going to create a knot called main with a question and 3 choices. Each choice is going to print out some text and then have a divert, which directs the story back to the main knot. By diverting back to the main knot, it'll send the dialogue back.
Oh, he's flying. Okay, so like in every case, our person at the Ask Us desk is super helpful, just like in real life. So they're going to say, I can help with that. And then they're going to say something else. Well, let's just test that. So. Oh, he's also getting just end of story still. Okay, let's...
back to the original question we posed, thus creating...
Oh, very tricky. There's actually not a space in there. Okay. That doesn't work. What did I do wrong here? Okay, so I'm like getting my question showing. What if I just, I don't know, is... I think I tried too much at once. I don't really get why this isn't a choice, though. Like, right? Like, where am I wrong here? So I don't know, let's try exactly doing his example. I'm ignoring those errors. Oh my god. Have I had extra equal signs that whole time? The story idea is I kind of just want to like model out a service interaction at the library desk, at the Ask Us desk. It's just to give myself something to kind of pick at while I'm obviously this close to mastering Ink. It's just little details at this point, really, you know, just figure out how the whole thing works. And so I'm just kind of noodling around with the an interaction I know very well. Okay, so but what's confusing let's back up a little bit.
Through the brackets, and the dialog that's displayed after will be everything except for what's in the brackets. Now let's do something a bit more interesting. I'm going to create a knot called main with a question and 3 choices. Each choice is going to print out some text and then have a divert, which directs the story back to the main knot. By diverting back to the main knot, it'll send the dialog back to the
he flies through that setup, and I think one of my
I'm going
issues
to
is
create a
in here.
knot called main with a question and 3 choices. Each choice is going to print out some text.
Okay, what if I do this construction of the knot first? So, Ink, basic structure, I'll call it knot name. I don't know, he's calling it main, so I'm just going to do that to make it easy on myself. But, yeah, right? Like make a party simulator, social function simulator. Yeah, cool idea.
Text and then have a divert, which directs the story back to the main knot. By diverting back to the main knot, it'll send the dialog back to the original question we posed.
Okay, so what's not right here? Main question. Oh, I almost. Does there like need to be multiple choices? I need a book. I need 2 books. Is that gonna? Weird. So the viewport doesn't automatically refresh. You need to run it back. So like we've been using the right syntax for a little while, I think. So let's see if this works. I need a book. You need a book. And then it goes back to me. So. Okay, let's it's confusing. Like I guess if you're on the same choice level, it'll refresh live, but you need to jump back choice levels if you are looking to go down a branch that does not go from the current knot you're at. Yeah. Okay, cool. We're learning. I know. What do you do at the library? Mod, you got something that you go to the SS desk for? Need a book. Supposed to meet someone. Looking for a room. The streaming room key, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean that's like looking for a room. We'll get locked key rooms into that room tree. Okay, back to our video.
Thus creating a loop for our dialogue. You'll notice that if we go through all of our choices, we get an error. This is because by default, these choices disappear after they've been chosen once, and after we've chosen them all, there's nothing else to show. One way to resolve this is by using a fallback choice. A fallback choice is executed automatically after all other choices have been chosen. To create a fallback choice, it's simply a choice with a divert arrow. Then, right below that, you can do whatever action you want to as the fallback choice. I'm just going to print out some text, but you could divert to another knot if you wanted to. We also need to include the end marker to properly end our story after it falls out of the choices flow. Now, after we exhaust all of our options, we can see that the fallback choice executes automatically. But perhaps you might not want the choices to disappear at all. If we want a choice to stick around, we can use what's called a sticky choice. The only difference is that we declare a sticky choice with a plus sign instead of a star. Now you can see that each choice is available as many times as we click it. Next, let's add a variable. If you go to Ink, Variables, you can see we have a couple of options. A global variable and a temp variable. A global variable is defined with var and can be accessed from anywhere within the story. A temp variable is scoped to the area which we declare it. So for example, if I declare it in the main knot, I won't be able to access it anywhere outside of that knot. There's one more kind of variable in Ink, and that's a constant. You can declare a constant with the word const. A constant is similar to a global variable, except a constant cannot be changed after it's been declared for the first time, whereas a global variable can. Variables can be anything from numbers to true or false values to text and even diverts. Let's create a global variable to store the Pokemon that we've chosen. It'll start as some empty text by setting the variable equal to these double quotes. Then when we make a choice, we'll change the variable. As you can see, if we just type out the variable assignment, Ink is going to treat that like plain text. To inform Ink that we want to modify this variable, we can put a tilde symbol in front of the statement. It's also important that the thing that we're assigning has quotations, as this tells Ink that Charmander is of type text and not another variable. Then to print this variable out, we can simply wrap it in curly brackets. As you can see, now when we choose Charmander, the text displayed is actually using our variable. To clean things up a bit, I'm going to add another not called chosen and direct each choice to call that not instead of looping back to main. Then I can print out the Pokemon choice by using the global variable. Alternatively,
That's pretty cool. Let's plug that into our example. So like, could do. It's not too much. So var goes above. We can do like var pursuit equals blank. Which Pokemon do you choose? I guess you use pluses here now. And let's go to pursuing. So cool, this is Markdown. And it's getting mad. These errors are coming from the fact that there's not a pursuing not yet, but tilde pursuit equals book Let's try having like two different choices that both go to this room option, because a meeting and a room are kind of like looking for a specific room, and it's looking for where you're meeting somebody are actually kind of the same pursuit. Close enough. It's an interesting like scenario. Pursuit equals tech. Okay, let's test it. Welcome to Ask Us. How can I help you? I need a book. You need a book. I can help you find that book. Supposed to meet someone. I can help you find that room. Oh, you need 2 books. Held on. Oh no. Okay. You need 2 books, sir. There are exactly 2 books you need. That's cool.
Instead of using a global variable to manage which Pokemon we've chosen, we can pass that information to the not using a parameter. On the not, we'll add parentheses followed by the variable name, which will be a temporary variable that can be passed in when we divert to the not. Now, in each of the diverts, we pass in the Pokemon name.
Wow,
like
that's
so.
really cool.
This is simply another way to do the same thing we were doing previously, but some would argue this looks a bit nicer. Ink also has some more intermediate level syntax for writing stories that have an always forward direction, which most stories do. This syntax is called weave, and it introduces 2 new concepts, gathers and nested choices.
Tell me about
In this
these gathers.
example, we're asking a question followed by 4 choices. Once something has been chosen, we're printing out some text and then using the done marker to bring an end to that choice path. In our previous example, choosing a Pokemon, we didn't need the done marker because we were always diverting to another knot. Since we're not doing that in this example, the done marker lets Ink know that the choice has been completed and that the flow has finished. So you've probably noticed that the text is the same for each of these choices. We can use a gather to simplify this a bit. A gather is meant to bring the flow back together after it's been branched out by choices. We can declare a gather with a dash symbol followed by whatever we want to do after the flow comes back together. In this case, it makes sense to just print out that common text. When using a gather, it will detect when the choice has finished and execute based off of that. Because of that, we don't actually want to use the done marker anymore. Now, if we click through, you'll see that once any of the choices are selected and that choice path finishes, the dialog is directed to the gather.
The greatest
and we
story
see
ever
that
told.
text printout. Gathers can come in really handy as your story flow gets more complicated. The other thing that Weave's syntax adds is the ability to create nested choices and nested gathers. When creating a nested choice, you simply add an extra star, or plus sign if it's a sticky choice, for each level that the choice is nested. Now, if we click through, our nested choices only show up after we've chosen the first choice. Likewise, we can nest gathers in a similar way, like so. You can now see that the nested gather will execute when the nested choices flow reaches an end.
Wow, that's pretty cool for what we're doing. Okay, so I could do, I need a book, pursuit becomes book, whoa. I need a book. How is the weather? How can I help you? I need a book, sunny. Do you know if it's a reserved textbook? Yeah, I think it is used for a course. I don't know, let's just make sure this works. I need a book. Do you know if it is a reserved textbook? Yeah, I think it's used for a course. Oh, that helps. I can help you find that book. Y'all see what I'm doing, right? I'm creating another variable to describe the kind of general location that the thing would be in. So I can get a really tailored response. So like, if it's used for a course, we all know this. It's going to be behind the desk. Oh, that helps. That book will be behind the desk here. Will be in the stacks. I need a book. Do you know if it is a reserved textbook? Yes, I think it is used for a course. Oh, that helps. That behind the desk here will be... I can help you find that behind the desk here. But why did... Oh, that helps. That... Oh. Yeah, I love computers. Oh, man. That's really stupid. All right, back to the top. Places. Welcome to Ask Us. How can I help you? I need a book. Do you know if it is a reserved textbook? No, I don't think it's used for any courses. Oh, that helps. That book will be in the stacks. I can help you find that book. I need a book. Yes, I think it's used for a course. Oh, that helps. That book will be behind the desk here. I can help you find that book. Pretty cool. Let's rip off our own code a little bit. So this is going after pursuit each time. Are you impressed, Mod? I've been called the world's greatest coder. My mother doesn't know many other coders, though. So this is going after pursuit. Supposed to meet someone, so their pursuit is a room. Thanks, Mod. Oh, whoa, my insert is... Mod, where in the building? What's a non-reservable space people would meet in? Like fishbowl for Hello. We're writing some stories. Crystal Wolf, do you have a place in the library that people meet that's not a reservable room? So if I put like enters here, does this screw up the syntax? I really cannot read all this. Oh, Hill of Beans is just a really good idea. People read Hill of Beans and have no idea where it is. A lot of our signage isn't necessarily directed towards it because it's like different than a lot of our spaces. It's pretty good. Let's use that. So, oh, that helps. That room will be, yeah, like a named, like somebody's gonna walk to the desk and say like, hey, I've never been in this building. I'm supposed to meet someone at this named place. Like maybe like data space, digital media lab. Oh, let's do digital media lab because let's do digital. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that because then we can make use of that excellent green wall. Yeah, exactly. You're a beat ahead of me. No, I think we're meeting near a media lab. Oh, that helps. That room will be and I don't know if these are actually room numbers. Okay, let's go back to the top. Welcome to Ask Us. How can I help you? I'm supposed to meet someone. Do you know if you're meeting in a reserved room? Yeah, I think my lab partners reserved a room for us, 5473. Oh, that helps. That room will be on the 5th floor. I can show you on this map display. I can help you find that room. I don't really. Let's make a new variable called howFind. And then so we're setting locale. In all those ways, so we could do change. I think there's a way to do the gather that they're talking about here, but like, I'm just, I don't know. We can optimize that later. How find. Okay, let's go back. Boop. Oh. I have played around with Twine. It's, you know, a lot of my familiarity with like the syntax is essentially from having messed with Twine. You're watching the process of me remembering how Twine works. I like Markdown a lot. I don't know. Twine has some integrations that I think you can get a lot of depth with. I think Ink aims to be highly interoperable. Just by being web native. Maybe Twine has a web native version too. I know that there's a lot of courses that use Twine over in College of Design and use it to like great effect. So yeah, I just haven't used it in a serious project. I haven't used this in a serious, I mean, I've been doing this for, I have 100 minutes of Ink familiarity, so definitely not an expert. How find. I can help you find that book. Ooh. Okay, let's see. I need a book. Do you know if it's a reserved textbook? Yes, I think it is used for a course. Oh, that helps. That book will be behind the desk here. I can help you find that book behind the desk here. Just give me a moment to grab it for you. Pretty cool. I need a book. No, I don't think it's used for any courses. Oh, that helps. That book will be in the stacks. I can help you find that book in the stacks using the catalog. Pretty neat. I'm looking for a room. This should actually be pretty similar. Okay, so your pursuit is a room. Do you know if it's a reservable room? Or locale. I can help you find that room. in the West Wing. It's a really good hook. I don't know, what else do people like?
My name is Tim Mensa. My artist name is Regular Decision. I originally...
Check out this video. Ooh, coffee's a good idea, because then you can get them looking for hella beats. I'm going to get really distracted by Tim's interview if we let that play, so let's just jump to the next act here. Honestly, I'm just looking for a coffee. I can help you find that particular space on the first floor by pointing you through those doors labeled Airedale Cloyd. I hope I spelled that right. Named after two different people. Let's see. Looking for a room. See if it is a reservable room or another type of space. I'm I'm supposed. Oh, that's funny that edits live. I'm supposed to do a Twitch stream though. Honestly, I'm just looking for a coffee. Oh, that helps. That particular space will be on the first floor. I can help you find that particular space on the first floor by pointing you through those doors labeled Iredell Cloyd. That's cool. Okay. Whew. Starting to figure it out, right? It feels like you could build a lot of interaction just using like what we found in the last like 45 minutes there. Probably gonna wrap it there. Maybe let's do this technology item. I would love this system like just for tech items. Like there's so many cool things in our tech catalog that I think can be a little intimidating. Like if y'all ever looked at this link, like I often find myself just looking alphabetically through the full list of tech items, and I don't have to scroll very long before I find something that I'm not super confident using. Like I don't know that I necessarily know how this works. I have a guess. I bet that's a macro lens, but I don't know that somebody who hasn't spent a lot of time around photography might know the questions to ask, right? So this would be a cool little thing to build out this way. But I'm going to save that. Might see us coming back to it. Maybe we'll make a more substantial game. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. I hope everybody's keeping their stress low as you go into exams, playing good games, bookmarking lots of books and movies for a couple weeks from now when your schedule opens up a bit. Remember to drink water, remember to take naps, and remember to come hang out with us here on Twitch. We'll see y'all at the library. Bye, everybody.